So Tamara, whereabouts are we now?
We're currently in the Salon de la Francophonie, which is a room in Centre Block dedicated to French Canada. It actually was originally the smoking room on the Senate side, but in the 1990s, when they decided that you couldn't smoke in Centre Block anymore, they converted this room into a room that celebrates French Canada. So on the walls, you can see paintings of the French kings, and these are actually on loan to the Senate from the National Capital Commission and as part of their crown collection. So typically what you'd see in here is a large meeting table along with the chairs upholstered with the fleur-de-lis around it. But because this space opens up to the public tours in the summer, everything has been moved to the side to allow the public to come in and to see this space.
And some of the portraits here, I mean, this is Louis XIV, I believe.
Yes. So the portraits in here are of various French kings from when Canada was a French colony. Here you can see Louis XIV, and we can move around and look at some of the other paintings as well. One other object worth mentioning is this map of Lower Canada as of New France, or what is now Quebec and part of Eastern Canada.
It's amazingly detailed for the times. It's quite accurate until you get further west, eh?
Yes, yeah. But in their area they were quite detailed.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a gorgeous room here. So now we're heading down to the Speaker's chambers and the Speaker's office, eh?
That's right. So just off the Senate foyer is where the Speaker's office is located, and really he has a suite of offices, so we're going to go take a look at those now.
And these normally aren't on the public tour? Right?
No, they are not normally on the public tour route.
Special access today.
So right now we're actually in the Speaker's suite. This is the Speaker's Salon, which would be used for welcoming guests. And as you can see, it has similar carved panels to what you can see in other places in Centre Block. And then it also has original wallpaper along the top of the room.
So Tamara, this gorgeous fireplace has an interesting story behind the craftsman behind it. What can you tell us about that?
A lot of offices, or the larger offices in Centre Block, do have fireplaces. And in the 1920s, when this building was built, a man by the name of Paul Beau, who was from Montreal and was a wrought iron smith, but really a craftsman, designed and built all the andirons, fenders, screens, pokers, tongs to go into the fireplaces in Centre Block. And they're still here in the offices. At the time that he was building them, he actually did receive a number of large commissions. But then unfortunately, as it happens for many artists, at the end of his life, handmade goods like this weren't valued. So he died in poverty in Montreal. But now the National Gallery has exhibited his works. He's also collected by the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Montreal. And so posthumously he's celebrated, but unfortunately at the end of his life it wasn't. And we're lucky enough to have his stuff in Centre Block.
And do these fireplaces still function?
No, unfortunately for the occupants, they don't function anymore. They're only decorative. Most of them will have like Tudor roses or fleur-de-lis, which are very common kind of English-British themes. But yeah, this one has the dragons on the screen itself.
Wow. This room is fantastic. Maybe the most beautiful room, I think, on the hill.
Yeah, so right now we're in the Speaker's dining room, which is just off the Salon. This is certainly one of the most ornate spaces within Centre Block, and I mean the carvings in here are just fantastic.
And this enormous table too.
Yeah, so this is part of the furniture that's actually original to Centre Block. The table was designed by the Department of Public Works, and the chairs were designed by the architect of Centre Block, and then built by a Montreal-based furniture company. And so this is one of the spaces where we tried to respect the original furniture configuration and for as long as possible make sure that this furniture remains in use in Centre Block.
And the squirrels here, the woodland creatures, which are one of my favorite things in the Parliament buildings, I think.
No, there's certainly a whimsical quality to them, and you kind of see a little bit of breaking away from just having references to English and French Canada, but more to incorporate Canadian motifs by incorporating animals and plants that would exist in Canada.
So I think one of my favorite parts about the Parliament buildings are the little secret hidden carvings and so on. And one of the most special ones are on this door here.
Yeah, so this is the neat aspect about Centre Block is that even in the doors, there's an incredible carving program. So in here you can see little flowers or little faces are on the details of the doors in most of Centre Block. So this is where his assistant would sit, and it leads us into the actual speaker's office.
And again, these beautiful carvings in the oak here.
Yeah, and what you can see is that throughout the speaker suite, there's Latin inscriptions that are located above the doors, and I think there's about 6 of them in total.
And this was done after the First World War when the...
Exactly, so all of these were carved in the 1920s. Right.
So when we were in the foyer of the Senate, we saw a replica of this, but this is the actual mace.
Yeah, so right in this case is the actual mace that needs to be in the Senate chamber in order for the Senate to be in session. And so it will stay here in the Speaker's office, and then there is a person who works for the Senate who's the mace bearer, and their responsibility is to take it from the Speaker's office into the Senate chamber when session is occurring.
So there's a procession down to the Senate chamber.
Exactly. The Speaker, the usher of the black rod, the mace bearer are among those who are on the Speaker's parade, and they have a procession where they leave the Speaker's suite and then they make their way to the Senate chamber.
And when the Senate's not sitting, it's the Speaker's job to keep this safe. Eh?
Well, it certainly stays in his office, yes.
So Tamara, here in the Speaker's office, normally there is a different table at this position. What's normally here?
So typically what's actually here is the table that was used by Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Queen Elizabeth II to sign the proclamation of the Constitution in 1982, bringing the Constitution back to Canada. But that table is actually on loan to the Museum of History right now and is part of their Canada 150 exhibition.
So normally this is not open to the public, so the fact that you can see it over at the museum now is a pretty special opportunity.
Exactly, it gives the public an access to see the table itself.
So it's the Speaker's office, and where are we heading now?
So from here we'll actually head around the corner to the Senate's reading room.
So Tamara, what's the function of this room here?
Yeah, so right now we're in the Senate reading room, which is kind of a private space for senators to come to while session is going on if they need to step out. It's also kind of a conversation space, or as the name suggests, a reading space.
So the casual meetings spot.
That's
and for both opposition and government senators would mingle here?
Yes, we don't have a separation by party in that way for the reading room on the Senate side.
There's the very striking paintings at the back here.
Yeah, so on the west wall of the reading room, you can actually see 2 paintings that were done by a Toronto-based artist, Tony Batten. I guess he completed them in 2016, 2017, and he came to Centre Block to document different spaces and paint them in commemoration of Canada's 150th birthday and prior to the closure of Centre Block, so he could document the spaces before it was renovated.
So this painting on the left, this is the Senate foyer where we were when we first entered the building, eh?
Exactly, and similarly the other one is of the Senate chamber.
So, Tamara, it's been a real honor and a privilege to see these hidden spaces of Parliament on the Senate side of Parliament buildings. So thank you so much for taking all the time with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.